Mike's on.
All right, a little after 5. Tune into SNY's exclusive Met coverage tonight with the pregame at 6:30, followed by the Mets and the Blue Jays at 7:10. And you'll get to see Ron Darling, who joins us now. Ron, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Nice to talk to you again.
Hi, Ron. Got a lot to get to you with interesting stuff that's going on with this pitching staff the last couple of days. First of all, the Grom thing on Sunday. Yeah. The steadfast, hey, if a guy throws 40 pitches, he's out of the game. I had never heard that before from anybody. Did you agree with this idea of this? What's your thoughts on this hard and fast 40-pitch rule for an inning?
Okay, first, if you put it in the context of how they treat pitchers now, I understand it. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. In fact, I pitched a game in '92 against the Milwaukee Brewers where their rookie of the year for that year was this guy named Pat Listash. He led off the game 17 pitches later. He got a hit off me. And I threw, close to 40 pitches in the inning, and I ended up lasting 7 innings in that game. So it can happen. I would like to see the pitchers go out there and pitch more. Let me give you a number, Mike. I just looked it up. The Chicago White Sox, we can agree, are one of the worst teams in baseball, right, this year. Yep. Their starting pitching has thrown 193 innings. Their starting pitchers. The Mets' starting pitchers have thrown 194 and 2/3. An inning and 2/3 more than the Chicago White Sox. I think that's quite a shame.
And also, I just don't know what the message. Now, listen, if he's hurt, fine. He's not. He didn't give up a hit in that game. I understand they fouled a bunch of balls off. I understand he battled. But if he was injured or the weather was a big factor, maybe he shouldn't have started then. But I thought, why not let him throw his 90 or 100 pitches anyway and continue along? So that puzzled me. The hard and fast 40 puzzled me. But then, how about the Blevins? I mean, you got Blevins up, and then you don't bring him in the game. I mean, first of all, you got him up. You don't bring him in the game. He's a lefty specialist. And then you say, I didn't want to use all those pitches. You used the same number of pitches anyway.
Well, there's a few layers to this. So let's take DeGrom first. With DeGrom now, because you're taking him out early because of the hyperextended elbow, you miss him for a full start there. You put him on the DL, he misses a full start there. And because you take him out of the first, after the first inning, he misses a start there. So you're talking about 3 starts out of 30 in a year. That's 1/10 of what you need out of DeGrom for the season has now gone by the wayside. Second, as far as pitching and innings, this is how they do it in the minor leagues, Mike. If you have 35 pitches in an inning, you come out of the game. Even if you haven't gotten out of the inning, you come out of the game. They feel that's stress and under duress. I don't know. When I was a kid, I figured if you were throwing that many pitches in an inning, maybe you had to throw some more to figure out how to get out of the inning. And I think that the final thing for me is just that, I think what's important is that you have, one of your best pitchers. He hasn't pitched in 10, 12 days. You're going to need him over the course of the season. And really, he's gone out and thrown a bullpen 45 pitches and not gotten his work in. So that's it with DeGrom. As far as Blevins, and I said it on air, if you're going to have him on the roster, you're going to have him on the team, that's where you use him. Nick Williams is a guy that could be a starter for many outfielders in baseball. They have a glut of outfielders on the Phillies, so he does not start. If you pinch hit for him, they're going to bat a guy like Florimon or Knapp or someone like that who certainly does not have the power that Nick Williams had. So I think there were a couple of reasons to use Blevins there, to turn him around or get another hitter in there other than Williams. Or if you face Williams, we always talk about the numbers, and the numbers are that Williams was 0 for 3 off Blevins. So, you got to use those numbers too. And finally on DeGrom, Mike, the analytics have gone to such a place where if you throw 35, 40, 45 pitches in an inning and give up some ground ball, give up some foul balls or whatever, the analytics is starting to tell you now that guy is absolutely going to have a bad start, so you take him out of the game. And I just don't understand that.
Especially with DeGrom, he hadn't given up a hit yet.
And also, we've seen DeGrom so many times kind of just figure it out because, he's just got a big heart and got lots of guts. And And, so we're trying to predict what's going to happen in real time in a game where we really have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and then, so there's this idea of that, and then you get yesterday where the pitching coach says about Syndergaard, well, he really hasn't done anything yet in the major leagues, which I'm sure Syndergaard didn't like hearing. So now you got a little tough love on the other side. So you got on one side, we're babying everybody. On the other side, now a little tough love from the pitching coach.
I think that what happened with Eiland and is that what he was trying to say is that, a question was, I think, posed to him, Syndergaard should be a perennial Cy Young candidate. And I think Eiland took exception to it only because, he's seen a lot of good pitchers in his day. And, when you look back at it, Noah has done so much at a young age as far as being 25 and being a dominant pitcher. But, he does have 25 wins in the major leagues. He doesn't, he's not at Kluber or Scherzer.
No, he's not Scherzer. Absolutely. No, absolutely.
He's not at any of those levels. And we had a number the other day, which was interesting. It's the 3-year anniversary of Noah coming to the major leagues, and it was comparing his 3-year anniversary, and you should never do this to today's pitcher anyway, to Tom Seaver and to Dwight Gooden. And it was just crazy what those guys were able to accomplish in the first 3 years, as opposed to Noah or anyone else of his age.
Well, nowadays, the other thing is they've minimized these pitches anyway because they've turned them into 6-inning guys anyway. So the idea of those guys is such a different thing now. I mean, it's just been lost. I don't even know if I'd want to be a starting pitcher anymore. I know they get paid well, but they don't let you dominate the games anymore. They don't let you lead unless you're a Verlander or a Scherzer, and you'll see that. The Yankee fans will see that with Scherzer tomorrow night. I mean, those guys come in, and their idea is, I'm pitching 9. If I don't pitch 9, I'm pitching 8. I mean, they're in there actually to pitch the game.
Mike, people are going to laugh at us and call us old dogs, but I will tell you, when you think about it, it's going to be in our lifetime, and it's probably going to be closer than you think, where we're going to have a game where the starter really doesn't even matter. You're just going to have a guy out there for a couple of hours. Hopefully he goes 6. Maybe he won't. Bullpen game. That is where the analytics are taking this game.
I think it's already there, unless you're dealing with really elite pitchers. I think it's there now. I think they want these guys to throw 4 innings, and that's it.
I totally agree, and I think, they can do whatever they want to do to try to speed up the game. The only way to speed up the game is the starting pitcher stays in the game. That's the only way they'll ever speed up the game. The games from yesteryear were 2 hours and 15 minutes because 2 guys went after each other for that time and didn't come out of the game. So I don't care what they do or what they try to do or whether they try to hurry up the relief pitchers or this or that. The games are in the bullpen after the 5th inning, sometimes the 6th inning, and after that it becomes a stall.
We're talking about Ron Darling. You see him, obviously, the Mets and the Blue Jays tonight, SNY, coming up this evening with his broadcast team, with Keith, who's got his new book, who's been out hammering that, and obviously Gary. Keith's been everywhere so far. He's been with me last week. He's done that's the thing about the books. You got to do 1 million appearances, and Keith's out there pounding away. I'm sure he's had enough by now. I'm sure he's a little interview. I'm sure you'll hear he's a little interview weary by this evening. You know that?
He is going to be exhausted for our games. I don't know how he's going to take it through it.
Absolutely. I guarantee you he's going to be I said to him the other day, I said, do I get an early interview? He says, yeah, this is one of the first. I said, good. I don't want to get you on the 50th,
That's right. That's right.
The Mets are 19 and 18. Okay? Yeah. Now, that sounds okay. I'm going to tell you this right now, and you can fight me back. Mets are a terrible team right now. They are not a 19 and 18 team. They are a bad team. They are a listless, bad team, rudderless, directionless, awful, especially with Cespedes out of lineup. They are a bad-looking baseball team right now.
I'm not going to fight you on this. I think that what they expected when the season started was that their starting pitching would dominate. That hasn't happened. It was really their bullpen that dominated early in the year that got them off to that 11-1 or 12-2 start. They're built to hit home runs. They haven't hit home runs yet. That's a big issue. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position. That's a huge issue, which leads to scoring a lot of runs. So, they certainly haven't been an exciting team to watch so far. Are they as good as they were when they were 11-1? Of course they weren't. Are they as bad as they've been lately? I don't think so. They've got to be better than that. But There's a lot of things that are happening around baseball, Mike. When I look at teams that are elite teams, they have great young
position
everyday
Absolutely.
players. Whether it's the Astros, whether it's the Yankees,
Red Sox.
the Red Sox,
yep. Atlanta coming quickly. All these teams built.
That's right.
They built with young, athletic position players who were top notch, and then they plugged the pitching in. The Mets tried to do it with the pitching, and it hasn't worked, and they don't have those players.
Yeah, and the guys that are coming up, Conforto has been a good player. He hasn't been a great player yet. Rosario and Smith's not even in the major leagues, and Rosario has struggled so far. I'm asked all the time, well, give people a chance. They're 22, 23 years old. These kids spend their entire childhood playing on these travel teams against the best players in all of America, all the states. So by the time they're 21, 22 years old, they're ready to go. They're ready to fly. So, judging guys because they're 23 and say you got to give them time is not a lot of time. The window now is 22 to 30. And if you're not getting great play out of those young players, you probably might not ever get it.
You look at the Braves right now, Albies, Acuna, Freeman, Markakis, Flowers. I mean, come on now. They're in a different league than the Mets. When they played the Mets, you're looking at this saying, these are two ships passing in the night.
Yes, Dansby Swanson, their shortstop. It's only his second full year. Albies has just been unbelievable. I tried to find a comp for Acuna Jr., and the only one I could find is someone that only maybe you and I know, Cesar Cedeno, when he first came up with the Astros.
Wow, that's high praise. Body. Cesar Cedeno, people thought might be pound for pound the best talent in baseball at the time.
Yeah, and he had great numbers. He never became the
became the player he was supposed to. Had a lot of off the field stuff, so he never became. But he was a wondrous player. He really was.
He had that perfect body and could steal bases and all that stuff. Acuna Jr. fits in that mold.
Wow, that's there's a lot of these guys coming. I mean, look, you hear tonight about Vladimir Guerrero's kid who's 19, who's supposed to be an unbelievable star. And you made a great point. These teams all built the same way. Good to top-notch, top young talents at positions, and then they filled in the pitching. The Mets did it the other way, and the pitching all broke down, or a lot of it broke down, and they've been left without those kind of position players.
Yeah, that's the big difference, Mike, is that the everyday starting player, young starting player, does not break down. The pitchers have, and I think that's the big difference.
Plus, if you're going to make them throw 4 innings, what's the use of having them anyway?
Well, they're training them for a 100-yard dash, and really it's a marathon. So I don't know what they expect when they get here anyway. So do you right now? Sandy said today, he got up and said, "I'm still very bullish on this team, but we have to play better." I'm not bullish on this team. I am very, very negative on this team right now. I don't like this team. I don't like anything about it. They have no 3, 4, 5 starters. The pen, I think, is okay long, but it's bad short. They don't have setup guys. They also have nothing in this lineup. They have no speed. They have no athleticism. Other than Cespedes, they have to have him going, and he's not. He's been okay, but then there's no Frazier. Bruce hasn't gotten started. Conforto hasn't gotten started. So I don't like what I see. Are you still optimistic, or are you more towards the negative? Well, I'm definitely less bullish than Sandy because I watch all the games like he does. But I will say that if they somehow can change their mindset and let DeGrom and Syndergaard and somehow Matz or Wheeler, one or the other, I don't care which one, Matz or Wheeler, figures out how to do it, then they can get to a place where even though they're not scoring runs, they're in every game, and then they got a better shot. I'd be more bullish if I see the team decide to use their strength, which is Syndergaard and DeGrom, and let them stay out there, because anyone you bring in after Syndergaard and DeGrom, I don't care how many pitches they've thrown, is a step down.
Do you think, have you seen something in Matz that is giving you some optimism?
Yeah, the last couple of starts, his arm speed on his changeup is exponentially better. His breaking ball still is not there, but he is left-handed. That makes a big difference, especially against today's lineups. I'm starting to see some good things from Steven, but again, it all comes whether he can stay on the field or not.
I haven't been impressed. I'll say this, and I'm not dragging you into it. I haven't been impressed with the manager. I can't hear process anymore. I don't want to hear process all year. I can't listen to that. I can't hear it about process. I can't hear everything's wonderful and everybody's great when they're playing like this. And he's made a lot of weird moves. I mean, the other night he pinch run Reyes when he had no one to pinch hit later in the inning. I'm saying, what do you? I mean, why? I mean, so I'm really scratching my head with him. Blevins on Sunday. I haven't been impressed so far. I know he's a young manager. I'm not making any decisions on him, and I think his offense has been terrible. So he has everyone looks bad when your offense doesn't hit. We understand that, but I haven't. It's kind of weird. I don't get a real. I don't know the feeling I'm getting for this manager. Tell me something that you like about this manager right now.
Well, I think that when they had the lineup snafu, is that he has the ability to fall on his sword and not be afraid to say I made a mistake. I appreciate that about him because a lot of time you get a lot of guys dancing around the issues. So I think he's a straightforward guy. I think he's a guy that wants to excel, and I think he is a smart guy that should excel. That being said, some of the unorthodox moves you trace back to, how close are we to the analytics, Mike, or not the analytics? Let's think of the Blevins move, okay? If it's the analytics, then Blevins comes into that spot 100 out of 100. But if you're not bringing Blevins in, then that's more of a gut call. So what are we doing? Are we analytics, or are we having gut calls or making gutsy calls like managers did 30, 40 years ago?
Plus, his answer didn't make any sense. I didn't make the move because I needed him to stay in the game. I didn't have enough pitches to finish the game. What are you talking about? I mean, I think
you have to identify, if you're a manager, there's two things you have to be able to do well, and that is you have to manage your bullpen, but more importantly, you have to know when a certain out is the out you have to get or you're not going to win the game. I mean, that's I think all good managers have that sense of when they have to make a move because it's going to mean the game or not, and the good ones are able to do it. And, this is in, I guess, Mickey's defense, but it's not really in his defense. These teams, ownership groups and general managers have decided that having experience doesn't matter at managing at the major league level. I think that's a lot of BS, in my opinion. I think the more experience you have, the more games you've seen, the more times you've had to make decisions under duress, the better you'll be at it. And that only makes sense to me.
They want guys to get along with players now. That's all they talk about, and I don't understand that myself. The other day in basketball, they fire a guy who won 59 games, who benched his star who was stinking up the court, and he got fired. So, I mean, it just tells you that, and he came in and said, I'm going to love the players, I'm going to relate to the players. How about holding them accountable? I mean, to me, they're getting paid a lot of money. Why not ask them to go out there and perform? I mean, and you know what? If not, we'll get someone else to perform. You guys got special jobs. There's always someone looking to take your place. It's a competitive business.
Yeah, and it's a meritocracy, or should be anyways. I think that when you think about today's manager, you hear the same thing all the time, and that is they have to be able to communicate with the players. They have to be able to communicate with the front office to pare down those analytics and present them to the players. That's something that, has changed so much. Mike, in my day, if the manager or general manager did not speak to you for the whole year, you knew you had a great year. You did not want to talk to them, you didn't want to see them, and they didn't talk or see you as long as you were doing your job. And it's not like that anymore.
Keith said something funny the other day. He said, hey, I said, Keith, how would you have done in this era? And he said, it's funny. These guys hit 230 and walk around like they're Pie Trainer. So I thought that was a great line. It's true. I mean, it really is true.
Well, what would happen in today's game is that everyone's supposed to be of the same ilk. So, these guys have to show up at 2 o'clock. They got to hit off the tee. They got to do all that kind of stuff. Hey, when I played, Keith used to take the bus with us at 4 o'clock. He'd get there, take a few swings, do the crossword puzzle, have a cup of coffee, and go 3 for 4. He would be looked at differently than he was as a player when he was in the 70s and 80s. He'd be looked at as a renegade, a free spirit. Boy, he doesn't do what all the other players do. Well, he didn't have to. He had 344 and won an MVP. So it's a different game, Mike. I mean, it's so different. I think that my window is about 2 or 3 years before it completely changes, and I don't even know what the game's like anymore.
That says a lot. You're not a prehistoric guy either. It's not like you're 100 years ago,
No, but it's changing quickly. It's the quickest I've ever seen a professional sports game change in such a quick time.
Unbelievable. Thanks, Ron, very much. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Mike.
Thank you. Ron Darling does a great job. He's an interesting thinker. That's why, because he's honest. That's why he's a good announcer, because he tells you the truth. He gives you, when guys aren't good, you say they're not good. That's at least what he and Keith do. They do that, and it's not easy to do because the players. Not that they have to have the players like them, but the players get mad about that stuff. I've had players knock Keith to me. I mean, young players. Or I ask them before they sit down for the interview. I ask them, what do you think of this guy? And they're like, oh, can't stand. They get mad because they get mad that these guys are critical of him. And I remember when those guys were critical of Tim McCarver. I remember when Keith was playing and I'd ask him about Tim McCarver, they all got mad about Tim McCarver. And you ask the golfers about Johnny Miller, they all get furious about Johnny Miller because Johnny Miller says they choked when they miss a putt. He says, you know what? You gagged on that putt, but Johnny Miller won championships, so he can say that. But they hate Johnny Miller, the golfers. They can't stand him because they think he is critical of them. They don't want anybody going on the air being critical of him, and especially an ex-player. Because if you do it and you're a broadcaster, well, you're a broadcaster, you don't know, you never played. That's their excuse, and they're out of that, okay? They don't care what you think because you didn't play. But when they get it from a Johnny Miller or they get it from a Keith, then it stings, and they get really mad. I mean, really mad. Who was the guy in that terrible movie? What was the name of that movie? Oh,
The Scout?
No, not that movie. The movie that the newscasters. It's like a parody on the news. Not the
Anchorman.
Anchorman. Ron Jeremy.
Ron Burgundy.
That's who one of the guys said. That's what he called Keith. So I'm not going to tell you what player. I said, what do you think of Keith? He goes, oh, Ron Burgundy. That's what we call him. So so it just shows you that they get mad at him because they call him Ron Burgundy from the Anchorman. So the point is, it just shows you Keith. We all know what kind of player he was. He was one of the great fielders of all time. He was an MVP. The guy was a tremendous player. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. Clutch, line drive hit. I mean, we all know we saw him play. The guy's a great player. They don't, first of all, didn't see him play, but they get mad that someone's up there being critical of him. And I remember going back to Keith's time when Keith was playing. Nobody got more angry than they did at Tim McCarver. And you know who was the worst? Davey Johnson. Davey Johnson got so mad at me on things I used to say on the radio. I used to get in fights with Davey Johnson all the time. He hated me because I was critical of him. He couldn't stand it. He went crazy. So these guys, that's how it works out. So, you expect that stuff. But nowadays the separation's even larger between as Ron just said, he doesn't even recognize what's going on anymore. So here's a player who played not that long ago. So now you hear him saying how he doesn't even recognize how things work now. Back after this.